We'll be building a Notes app using Flutter and its Sqflite package. So start by clicking on Start a new Flutter project and select Flutter application and click Next. We'll change the project name to NoteUp. We'll change the description also. Notes app in Flutter. Click Next. Click Finish. We'll wait until the project is loaded into the Android Studio. The project creation is almost complete. So I'll adjust the IDE panels. Then this is a project structure. The dot code is in the lib folder. I'll just delete the default main.dot file. Create a new dot file. I'll name it main. So we'll begin by importing the material.dart file. As you can see, the auto suggestion hasn't loaded completely, but we'll keep coding nevertheless. We'll create a class NoteUp which extends stateless widget. Override its build method. Return a material app widget. Alright. Now the entry point of our main.dart file is the main function, and it will call the runapp function. Will pass an instance of a NoteUp widget to the runapp function. Now let's expand our material app. We'll give it a title, NoteUp, and we'll also specify the home property, but we'll keep it to null for now. As you can see, there's an error. The function myapp isn't defined. The widget test is expecting a myapp widget in the main.dart file here, but we have given it the name NoteUp, so we'll rename it here also. Okay, done. We'll create a folder for pages. Okay. Create a new dart file in the pages folder. That will be our first page named home. Import material.dart and create a class home, which will be a stateful widget. Override its createState method. Also create the secondary class for a stateful widget, that is homeState class, which extends the state of the home class. and let's override its init state method as well as the build method. We could also define this by with a simple shortcut STF, typing STFUL. This option for stateful widget is auto suggested, but it messes up my indentation, so I prefer manually typing. In the init state method, let's type in super.init state, and in the build context we'll be returning a scaffold widget. Scaffold widgets will be the roots of our pages. So in the create state, we'll be returning an instance of the home state class. But since there's only one line, we can define that create state method in a shorter way without the usage of curly braces. So let's set a home property in the main.dart file to a home widget. And as you can see, the home.dart is automatically imported. Let's open up my mobile screen. Let's run the app to see what we have till now. Ensure that the USB debugging is on. Okay, the app is open. It's just a blank page with a banner at the top right. Let's remove that banner. Okay, the banner is gone. Let's create an app bar for our home page. Let's also give it a title, which takes a text widget, and we'll give it as notes. Let's create the body for our home page. We'll give it a listview.builder. Item builder will take two parameters, the build context as well as an index. The item count property will for now be 10, and the item builder will be returning a card widget. The child of that card widget will be a list style, and the list style will have a title that should be a text widget with the string sample, or better yet title plus index.toString. Okay, let's see. Title 0 to title 9. 10 cards in total. Let's also give a subtitle. That will also be a text. It should simply show sample content. Okay, done. We'll give this list view a little bit of padding. Let's give it 7.0. A little bit too much. Let's go for 5.0. Okay, better. Let's give the card some color. Colors.green. No, doesn't look very appealing. Let's give it a light shade of yellow. Okay. Now let's add a floating action button. The child should be an icon. Should be the plus icon, which is icons.add. Okay, there it is. When we click on it, nothing happens. So let's create an onPressed property, which will be a function, and let's just keep it there. So now let's create our next page in the pages folder. That will be edit. So import the necessary packages. Create class edit extending the stateful widget and override its createState method. So create the secondary class editState extending the state of edit. Override its initState method as well as the build method. Let's return an instance of editState to the createState function. The initState will have a default super.initState and the build method will be returning scaffold. So now let's try to navigate to the second page when we click on the floating action button using the navigator.push. For the material page router builder, we'll pass the parameter context and return an instance of edit. Okay, the edit.dart is automatically imported. Let's see it in action. Okay, the edit.dart is now a blank page. Let's add an app bar. Let's also give it a title. Title will be a text with the string new. Let's create the body for the edit page. This one will be a list view. sorry, the children property will have two children. There are two text fields. There, but there are two attached to the edges. Let's give it a little bit of padding. 13.0 should suffice. Okay, better. Let's also give a bit of spacing between the two text fields. We'll use a sized box. Let's give it a height of 10. Okay. We'll create two text editing controllers for the two text fields. We'll name it as title and content. And in the init state, we'll initialize the text editing controllers with symbol text. Okay, now let's pass those text editing controllers to the controller properties of the text fields. Let's see it in action. Nicely done. The content text field requires a bit more styling. The content text field should be larger. We'll give it the max lines property to 35. That's a little bit too large. So let's go for 27. Much better. Now let's put those state properties to use. For the home page, let's create a new boolean value, loading, and we'll set its default value to true. We'll create a function, future of type void, refresh, it's asynchronous, and we'll await a future.delete of duration 2 seconds. Then we'll set state with loading equal to false. So whenever the init state is called, so the init state will call refresh. So whenever the init state is called, the refresh function is also called. And the body, if the loading boolean is true, will be showing a circular progress indicator, else will be showing the list view. So 2 seconds of loading and then the list view appears. Let's create a new package. We'll name it as widgets. Let's create a dart file, loading, and in the loading import material.dart. Let's create a class loading which extends stateless widget. Override its build method and return sender with child circular progress indicator. The stroke width property of the circular progress indicator will be 3.0. Now let's go back to home.dart, and in the body, if the loading boolean is true, we'll be showing the loading widget. And the loading.dart file is automatically imported. Let's see it in action. Hot restart. 2 seconds of circular progress indicator, and then list view appears. In the edit.dart as well, let's create the loading animation, but here the loading variable will be false by default. Let's add, let's add a few action widgets to the app bar. It will be an icon button. First one will be an icon button. The icon will be icons.save. And on pressed, we'll keep it null. So it is disabled by default. So let's create an empty function for the onPressed property. Yeah, now it is enabled. In the function, the first thing we'll do is set state with loading equal to true. And then we'll call a function save. Just like the refresh function in the home.dart, the save.dart function, save function, will be asynchronous, and it will await a future.delayed of duration 2 seconds. Then it will set state with loading equal to false. Let's see that in action. Hot restart, 2 seconds of progress, then the list, then in the new, let's create save. But we haven't modified the body property of the edit widget. If the loading boolean is true, we'll be showing the loading widget, else the list view. Let's try that again, and there. Now let's add another boolean that will be edit mode. And if in the title, if edit mode boolean is true, the app bar title will be edit, else it will be new. To see that in action, let's keep the default value of edit mode to true. The default value of edit mode to false again. In the action widgets of the app bar, let's add another icon button, but that will be displayed only if edit mode is true. The icon will be icons.delete. And on pressed will be function. It will set state to loading equal to true. And then call a function delete. So let's define a function delete, which will be the same as the function save. Just rename the function and we're done. But instead of set state loading equal to false, when the delete function is invoked, it will wait for 2 seconds, then close the page using navigator.pop context. To see this in action, let's change the default value of edit mode to true. There, the delete icon, 2 seconds of circular progress indicator, and then exits the page. So the edit mode will be back to false again. So in the home.dart file, when the floating action button is pressed, the navigator will push another page on top. But when the page is closed, we could add a function which will be run when the second page is closed. That will be, we'll be calling the refresh function. Before the page is pushed, let's add a set state loading equal to true. So when we click on the page, the home page is set to loading equal to true. Then when we exit from the second page, we'll see 2 seconds of loading widget, then set state to list view. For each of this list style, Let's add the same thing as that in the floating action buttons on pressed property. So when we click on the any of the list style, the same thing happens.